This is a lecture from Open Tuition. For the free lecture notes that go with this podcast, please visit opentuition.com.
Right, question 3 of section B of the F5 exam, F5 exam from December 2014. Make sure you got the question in front of you, otherwise it makes no sense. But let's have a look. As always, look at the requirement first, then we know what we're after. Prepare on a relevant cost basis the lowest cost estimate which could be used as the basis for the quotation. Explain briefly your reasons for including or excluding each of the costs in your estimate. Well, relevant costing. And it's actually a very, very standard sort of question. The lectures on home tuition, I go through one or two, in fact, very similar examples. And they're nice, these, in that even if you make a mistake, the way we treat it, the way it's set out, it should be very easy to get your half marks. You need half marks to be passing. If you can get your half marks pretty quickly, then everything extra you get right is to an extent a bonus. Anyway, let's look. The High Life Company makes sofas. It's recently received a request from a customer to provide a one-off order of sofas in excess of normal budgeted production. The order would need to be completed within 2 weeks. And the following cost estimate has already been prepared. So there you have a costing: materials, labour, overheads, total 13,321. We're given lots of information, those notes relating to each of the costs. And our job is to go through that costing and effectively redo it. We need to read the information and check each one. That first one, fabric, maybe they've done it right, 3,400, fine. Maybe they've done it wrong. Well, we're going to rewrite that costing. We're going to put the right figures in. Maybe the figures they've got, for various reasons, we may change them. And remember, with relevant costing, because it's a one-off job, what we're after is simply what extra cost will there be to the company if we were to do the contract. That's all. If we do the contract, what extra costs will be incurred? If there's an extra £10 incurred, it's a relevant cost. If it's not going to cost us any extra, fine, there's no relevant cost. And finally, before we do it, rather importantly here, the question isn't just asking you for that schedule and to come up with a new total. You know, their total is 13,321, our total might be different. It specifically says, explain briefly your reasons for including or excluding each of the costs in your estimate. So although she only wants brief, you must explain, you must write a line about every item, why we've included or excluded something. And if you haven't, well, even if you get all your numbers right, you're only really going for half marks. I'm not going to waste time here writing them all out. I'll explain as we do it, but you must write them down in the exam. Again, if not, you're just throwing marks away, even if your arithmetic, your calculations were perfect. Let's run down from the top. I'll do them in order. As we look at each one, I'll read the note, we'll deal with it. One nice thing here, if you do get stuck on any, if you come to the first one, fabric, and you don't understand, don't waste time. Go on to the next one. You can do them in any order. And remember, you're looking to get half the marks. Once you've got that, then you can spend time on any that you found harder. Anyway, let's go from the top. Materials. First of all, fabric. They've got 200 square metres at $17 per square metre. Let's read the note, note 1. The fabric is regularly used by HL. There are currently 300 square metres in inventory, which cost us 17 a square metre, so that's where the 17 came from. The current purchase price of the fabric is $17.50. Well, very standard. I mean, as I've said for some of the others, I can't repeat a whole lecture from stuff on open tuition. This really is something you should have learned. If something's in regular use, if material is in regular use, then okay, we can steal some from inventory. It's sitting there. In a sense, it's free almost. But because we regularly use it for other products, we're going to have to replace that material. Otherwise, other products suffer. And so it's in regular use. We'll use the cost of replacing it. It's 200 square metres. To replace it is the current purchase price, $17.50. The relevant cost, therefore, $3,500. I say I don't want to repeat a lecture, but you see, we take it from inventory, fine, it did only cost 17. But if you take 200 from inventory, other products, they've got 200 less than they would have had, which means they're going to have to buy 200 more to replace them. So as a result of doing this project, we'll end up having to buy 200 extra square metres. Current price, $17.50. What about wood? 50 square metres at $8.20. Look at note 2. Again, it's regularly used and it costs $8.20. So far, no problem. Regularly used, replace it, there we are. However, the company's current supplier's earliest delivery time for the wood is in 3 weeks' time. So to replace it, we'd have to wait 3 weeks. An alternative supplier could deliver immediately, but would charge us $8.50. We've already got 500 square metres in inventory, but 480 of this is needed to complete other existing orders in the next 2 weeks. The remaining 20 is not going to be needed until 4 weeks' time. Ugh. Well, for the reasons I said for the fabric, because it's in regular use, we do need to replace these 50 square metres. Or 50 metres, sorry. Oh dear. The examiner's made a mistake. It says 50 metres at $8.20 per square metre. Anyway. We do need those 50. We do need to replace those 50. But the problem is it'll take 3 weeks to get them in. And 480 of those in inventory are needed within the 2 weeks. The remaining 20 are not going to be needed. So there's 20 in inventory, which they don't need in the 2 weeks. So we're going to have to replace, but there's no rush. We're quite happy to wait 3 weeks. And so those will be replaced at the normal price of $8.20. 3 weeks to come in, but they're not needed within 3 weeks. However, the other 30 we take, remember it's a total of 50, we're going to replace, but they're going to have to be replaced quickly. They're needed within the next 2 weeks. And the only way we can get them in 2 weeks is to use this alternative supplier. We're going to have to pay $8.50. So that was our problem. You see, if it hadn't been for that delay, replaced, normal price $8.20. But, well, I hope I've made it clear. 30 of them will have to replace quicker at a higher price. So what does that come to in total? 20 times 8, 20. 164, 30 times 850, 255. I get a total of 419. Yeah, 419 for the wood. Next, skilled labour. $200 at $16 per hour is on the table. But what does it say below? Note 3. The skilled labour is employed under permanent contracts of employment under which they must be paid for 40 hours a week, even if their time is idle. So even if they're doing nothing. So you've got to pay them for 40 hours a week, whatever happens. Their rate of pay is $16 an hour, but any overtime is paid at time and a half. Time and a half, if you're normally paid, let's say, $10 an hour, time and a half, you're paid $10 plus half of it, you pay $15 an hour. So overtime is paid more. In the next 2 weeks, there is spare capacity of 150 hours. So there's 150 hours when at the moment they're doing nothing, but we still have to pay them. It says they have to be paid for 40 hours a week labour, whether they're idle or not, or whether they're working or not, sorry. And so, how many hours do we need? We need 200. For 150 of them, it's not actually going to cost us anything because they're idle. We're going to be paying them for those 150 hours, whatever happens. Whether we leave them doing nothing or whether we do this contract. There's no extra cost. Irrelevant. However, we do need 200, so what about the extra 50? Well, they only had 150 hours idle, so we're using all that up. To get them to work another 50 on top, we'll have to pay them overtime. Their normal rate is 16 an hour, but time and a half means you pay them 1.5 times the normal rate. So instead of being paid 16, 1.5 will be paid 24. And so those 50 hours, 1,200. Incidentally, I said at the beginning of this that although I'm not writing notes for all of them, I'm speaking it. That, to get the marks, the examiner did want you to write down why you've included the figures you have or excluded. So it's not simply ignoring those 150 hours, but you are expected to write down why. You know, because otherwise it could be you didn't write it down because you got stuck. You don't have to explain. Anyway, nearly there. Semi-skilled. Back to the table. The table says 300 hours at $12 an hour, and it's note 4. Is it? Yes, 4. There's no spare capacity for semi-skilled, so there's no this idle time. They're currently paid $12 an hour, or time and a half for overtime. However, a local agency can supply semi-skilled workers for $14 an hour. Well, we've got a choice here. We either use our own people. If we use our own, since there's no spare capacity, they'll be paid overtime. We're paid at a higher rate. Again, they'll be paid 1.5 times the normal rate. They'd be paid 18 per hour. Alternatively, though, instead of using our own people and paying overtime, we could use this agency. And it would only be 14. Was it 14? Yeah, 14 an hour. But whenever you have a choice like that in this sort of question, we always assume sensibly that you choose the cheapest option. So the cheapest option would be to use agency workers. It'll cost us 14 an hour and we need 300 hours. The total, therefore, 4,200. Nearly there. Factory overheads. It's got their 500 hours at $3 an hour, so they've been absorbing them. But anyway, what does note 5 say? The $3 absorption rate is the standard factory absorption rate. So you should know what I mean by absorbing overheads. You know, they're just charging $3 every hour. $1.50 an hour reflects the cost of the supervisor's salary. And the other $1.50 an hour reflects general factory costs. Now stop there for the moment. Remember here, what we're looking for is what extra costs will be of doing this contract. And although you can absorb overheads any way you like for profit purposes, so far on what I've read, those first two sentences, there's no mention that total overheads are going to change. You see, the supervisor's salary, I don't know how much he's paid. Might be paid 10,000, might be paid 20,000. But that's a fixed salary. Doesn't get paid more just because he's doing this job. And similarly, general factory costs. So far, there's no mention of in total factory costs changing. And if it doesn't say we're having to spend more factory costs, no extra costs, not relevant. So far, completely irrelevant, but what about the next bit? He's paid an annual salary. Well, supervisors get paid a fixed salary. There's no relevance there. He's also paid $15 an hour for any overtime he works. You need to work 20 hours overtime if this order is accepted. Well, there is the only extra costs mentioned. That if we're having to pay overtime to the supervisor, how much is that going to be? He'll need to work 20 hours of overtime. He's paid $15 an hour for any overtime. And so the only extra cost in all of that paragraph is 300. General overheads will occur anyway, with or without the contract. Supervisor's salary will be paid anyway, with or without the contract. Finally, admin overheads. %10 of total production costs. So you can see in that schedule, they've got costs 12,110. Ours will be different, but they've then added on at 10%. But read note 6. It's an apportionment, it's a share of the general admin overheads incurred by HL. So it's the same logic really as I was saying with factory overheads. You see, I don't know what the total admin overheads are for the whole business. But let's just imagine, for the whole business, the overhead's 100,000. You can charge that 100,000, absorb it for profit purposes any way you like. But all I'm concerned about is the total we pay, 100,000, is it going to change? And there's nothing here that says admin overheads will change as a result of doing the contract. No reason they should. And if they're not going to change, there's no extra cost. It would only be relevant if you were told there'll be extra admin overheads of 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever. And so we've got it. All that remains is to add them up. And I'll probably get it wrong. 19. 3539415193, I think 9619, and there we are. The lowest cost estimate that could be used for a basis of the quotation. You know, we'd go and quote a much higher price, obviously, but if we're negotiating the price, well, we daren't go below 9619 because that's the extra cost there'll be of us doing the contract.